So for those of you that are joining us, watching this as a recording, my name is Jennifer McConnell. I'm the founder of Living Legacy, and this is the Living Legacy Conversations, where we're meeting with people that we think are fabulous and have caught our attention, and they are here to talk to us about their insights into all things death, life, and legacy. And that can range from anything in terms of end-of-life planning, living your life better, succession planning for business, and so many things beyond. So today I am delighted to be welcomed or to be joined by Kate Hufnagel from the Digital Wrangler, all the way from the States. So first off, happy Independence Weekend, Kate, but welcome to Living Legacy.
Oh, thank you so much, Jennifer. I am so excited to speak with you. I know we've Zoomed a couple of times. I have extended family in Ireland, and yeah, I'm just super thrilled that you
That's
invited me
great.
to join you today.
So, and especially thank you for coming in on a Sunday, because I know sometimes it can be the day of rest, but I suppose with running your own business, there's no such thing as a day of rest as such. So, for those that have just joined us, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Oh my goodness. Well, I have not been shy about posting. So about a week and a half ago, I celebrated my 50th birthday.
Happy birthday.
And thank you so much. Let's see what else. I have a couple of degrees in engineering. I fiercely independent wound up finding the love of my life, aka my dude, in my 40s and got married a year and a half, almost 2 years ago. So at the age of 48. So my mother, I think now can die in peace, quite frankly, knowing that her oldest has finally gotten hitched. Um, and I've lived all over the States. I was born and raised outside New York City. I've lived in Los Angeles. I've lived all over the state of Virginia. And about 10 years ago, I moved to Colorado. So I look out my window and I can see the mountains. And
The mountains
yes,
or mountains?
these are the Rocky Mountains.
Ah, nice, nice. My parents
Yes.
went their 40th anniversary. So you're definitely in a nice part of the state. And can I ask, so you mentioned you have a couple of engineering degrees.
Yes.
So how did you end up creating Digital Wrangler?
Well, there's no simple, concise answer. So the Digital Wrangler is just born out of all of my life experiences and my life influences. So as the oldest child, let's see, I got my first big girl job in 1998, and now I know it was called imposter syndrome, but back then I was like, what do I do with all of this money? And I grew up in a household that was very financially aware. So of course I like went to the library, got all of these books out, and most of the books talked or at least touched on estate planning documents. So here I am, like 24, but at that point I did make a mistake because I was reading that chapter or those chapters from the mindset of, oh, someday I'm going to be taking care of my parents' affairs. So then I asking them, Mom, Dad, you have these documents? It wasn't until my late 20s when I was now living in Washington, D.C., started making what at that point thought was silly money. And my financial advisor suggested I go meet with an estate attorney. So I'm like, sure. I mean, you're an expert, so of course I'm going to follow your guidance. So I created my first will when I was 28, 29.
Right, wow.
And then I had my first medical emergency at the age of 37. So I got my first ride in an ambulance, and I didn't have any family living less than 4 hours away. And in that moment, I'm thinking to myself, okay, well, I have my legal documents, which would have, anointed, one of my siblings to be in charge of taking care of my estate. But I realized in the hospital, I'm like, they all live in different states. They're not going to know anything about like my local utility bills or any of that information. Yes, they might have the authority that my legal documents specify, but they're still not going to know the lower level details, sort of speak. And then I had another medical emergency in my mid 40s. I was living here in Colorado, not yet married, but thankfully, um, I had someone like now easy for me to say words. My now husband, was there through it all. And at the end of that emergency surgery in the middle of the night, I received a life-changing diagnosis, which resulted in me having a very complicated surgery a year later. And during that time, like I had already updated my legal documents to have my now husband, even though we weren't married, to be in charge. But I realized, this was just 5 years ago. And I was like, we're now living in this digital age. There's all of these accounts and passwords. And even though we weren't married, he didn't know any of like those types of details related for me. So between my personal journey, and then I need to kind of take a side step and talk about my corporate career, where I spent many years working in the world of tech, right? If we think about the Facebooks and the Googles of the world, they never have outages. And so in my corporate world, many of those years were spent in the intelligence community. We were trained pretty much from day one of the mission is going to need to continue, even if you are not here tomorrow, whether you're out sick because you have a cold, whether you've been in a car accident and you're, recovering from a concussion. And so we were trained to always get information out of our brains and put it somewhere so that another colleague would know about it. So between my personal life experiences and that, like I'll call training, when I decided to leave the corporate world just about 3 years ago, I was like, you know what? I've been helping people informally organize all of their important information. Why don't I make a business of it and help people? And I said this to you when we were doing our practice run, help people ultimately die in peace.
And so, for those getting to it, what exactly does
the
Digital
Digital
Wrangler
Wrangler do?
Oh, so the Digital Wrangler helps people organize all of their important life details. So let's just assume that you have already worked with an estate attorney and you have put your legal documents in place, right? And I commend your audience members for doing that work, right? It takes emotional work. Potentially it's a financial investment, and it's a little bit of a journey. You just can't whip those documents out, very quickly. Sure, if you want to, but if you want to be thorough, it does take some time. So now you have these documents and you're like, this is great. Well, the questions that I ask my clients with regards to their legal documents is, okay, do your loved ones know what documents you have? Because if you are in an accident and time is of the essence and they need to produce, let's say, a medical directive or the document that says, hey, I'm in charge of their medical decisions, your loved ones are going to need to know that you have that document. They're going to need to know where they can find that document and how they are going to be able to access that document so that they can produce it to a hospital. Here in the United States, medical teams by default will do everything possible to keep you alive. And so if that's not your wish, if you wish something else, then you do want to make sure that your loved ones know where those documents are. And then when the situation comes and you are no longer with us, they're still going to need to know that you have a will, maybe a trust, and then where are they going to be able to find those documents? Or at the very least, do the loved ones know who the attorney is who then can provide and produce those documents? So that's just one sliver. In our in our tech day and age of today, we also talk about devices and making sure that loved ones can have access to devices, because those horror stories of families kind of like linking arms and go to a funeral home director and literally begging for access to their loved one's body to get access so that they can see if the fingerprint is going to unlock the phone. I mean, that's not a legacy that I want any more people to leave behind. Um, so then we just start peeling the onion. We tackle all different areas of our lives, from email and social media to streaming services to even making sure that loved ones have a current list of financial assets and liabilities. Because in our high-tech world, right, where some people like to kind of play that game of like, okay, I'm going to move money from this bank to this bank because I'm getting a higher interest rate. And because those accounts change, and the average, at least the average American, is updating their estate documents once a decade, making sure that that list is as current as possible really becomes important, all in the name of making things easier for those we leave behind.
And can I ask though, like, I mean, it is an interesting, I was only talking to somebody today about that thing about the thumbprint and, you know, the more that we're reliant on like a two-factor authentication, that you may have access to the phone, but you may not have access to the device. And therefore the second authenticator, you can't access and get the relevant information. But is there a fine line between making sure your loved ones have access to your digital legacy as such and people that could potentially abuse it?
Oh, it is a very fine line, right? And so because I mean, it's in the news all the time, right? Major corporations getting hacked. And so there are tools out there that people can utilize to store their information. Quite frankly, none of my clients come to me because they don't want to use a tool. They don't want to use a tool that they may have to have another bill to pay. They may not feel comfortable using a tool because these companies are only typically 2 to 3 years old. They haven't had enough time to develop like their street cred. So I meet clients where they are and what makes them feel comfortable. If they want to store information on their laptop and no place else, if they want to store information, let's say in a Google document and they're saving it in a cloud account, I work with them to kind of figure out what's their level of comfort, and also asking the question of, okay, so if we're going to go down this path, then we need to also make sure that we're talking about how you're going to keep this information updated. How are your loved ones going to be able to access this information? And like you said, Jennifer, like multi-factor authentication, I have a client whose mom passed away now probably about 2.5 years ago. It was not a surprise. Her mom had been ill for quite a while, and my client had a lot of time to work with her mom to kind of get this information, figured out. And once her mom passed, the first thing my client wound up doing was turning off and canceling her mom's cell phone. And she told me she realized within 30 minutes of doing that, that was a horrendous mistake because she couldn't undo that. And so, like you said, multi-factor authentication, like loved ones are now, for better or for worse, we have to pay at least a couple of months, if not longer, to make sure that we can receive all of those codes. I mean, my husband and I were traveling a couple of weeks ago, and we wanted to go and order something from Amazon. And because we were not on our home network, Amazon is, sending us a text of the multi-factor authentication code, which is great. Right? It's great. It's protecting us while we're alive, but it does create a lot of challenges after we pass.
Yeah. And I think that as well, that somebody made recently a point to me. I was talking about like that, the digital legacy and how to ensure that you have all of your passwords and your utility bills and email, everything that is online that you've got it tracked somewhere, even if it is an Excel document and you have an encrypted copy of that document. But even things like in terms of environmental sustainability, the more that we actually save digitally, the more that data is required and the more that then these data centers are built to store all of that data, where actually one of the key things, if we want to be both environmentally sustainable but more effective and efficient, is actually to go through everything that we have and actually get rid of the duplicates of the photographs, print the photos that we want to actually enjoy, or put them on something that we will actually use them. But I think the thing as well is that it's that aspect of the storing of digital, but actually what do we use of all of the things that we have saved online?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, at least in the States, the average American takes 7,000 photos a year. 7,000 photos a year.
Yeah.
Now, some of those could be screenshots. Some of them could be, oh, I'm at the store and I'm going to take a picture of this with the dimensions. I want to see if it's going to fit when I get home. Or it could be the inverse, like, okay, I'm taking a photo of the size of the filter in our heater. So when I go to the store, I'm buying the right size.
What I
But
do with
if
my
not,
take this photo of a label, so I can read what the label actually says.
well, exactly. And if we don't practice like good, what I call good digital hygiene, where we're reviewing our photos and culling them and deleting the ones that are no longer important to us,
Mm.
then if something, let's say something were to happen to me tomorrow, my husband's going to be looking at all of these images, all these photos, and he's going to be like, why are these even here? And in his grief, he's going to become overwhelmed and he's not going to take any action,
And I
right?
think
Even
years ago, if sorry to cross you there, even years ago when we used to have this, so the slideshow, and people would invite you to the slideshow for their holiday photos. And even with that, if you look, I used to love taking like old digital film, giving it into the pharmacy, getting them printed. Like I think you used to be able to do it in Walmart and get them printed, and then you get everything back, and you realize like 2 out of 3 photos are blurry, or somebody made a face, or there's just something wrong. And it is that thing of actually now we have that fortune of being able to actually delete the photos where we don't look good, but then we still have 1,000,001 photographs. And I'm just seeing here, actually, one person here, Jane, she's a culprit of taking photos and screenshots and then keeping up to date with organizing them. So thank you very much, Jane, for sharing that. And I think that's the thing is that actually, even if we try to go in and declutter our online presence, declutter all the things that we have connected to us, it's so freeing because it's one less thing to worry about, but it also allows us to take stock of the photos that we do enjoy. So what do we do with them? Do we then print them, frame them? Do we share them? Do we put them on cards? What can we actually utilize better of our digital presence? And the same way with social media. Like I think I still have a Bebo account, which was an Irish online platform that was launched before Facebook. I haven't touched it in about 15 years. So it is that thing of actually, are we aware of all of the things online that are connected to us?
you're absolutely right. And so I'm working with a client right now. We're working on actually organizing their passwords. And she said to me last week in our session, she's like, I've got passwords for accounts that I don't even know if they still work. And she is highly, like, she's probably one of my most digitally astute clients where she's like, I need to make sure that this account no longer exists. And I said, okay, I said, it is a very manual process, right? To go through that, try and log in. Does the password work? Oh, wow, you discover that, I don't know, your Shutterfly account that you haven't touched in 13 years is not only still active, but then you realize, oh my gosh, I have photos in here from 20 years ago. I don't want them to have that data about me, right? And so then you have to find for each online account, what's the process then to shut down and ultimately delete your account if you have no interest in keeping that.
Mm.
And so a few months back, I was in Denver speaking to a group of small business owners, and I was touching on Facebook, and a woman raised her hand. She was crying. She was very visibly upset, but she obviously wanted to share something. And so she started off by saying, everyone in this room needs to listen to Kate. She said, my husband passed away 7 years ago. And then she consoled us because we were like, oh my gosh. And she's like, look, he had been sick for a while. It was not a surprise. She said, but 7 years ago, what all of these things that Kate's talking about in terms of a digital legacy, a digital afterlife, she said, these were not top of mind for me and my husband. So he passed, and I did not have the password to his Facebook account. She was crying because about a year and a half ago, that Facebook account, which has been lying dormant because, Facebook isn't going to shut it down because it makes their numbers look bad. But that dormant account belonging to her deceased husband was hacked. And the hackers were sending her messages from her deceased husband's Facebook account. I know. And that's why she was crying. And that's why she was telling then everyone in the room, you need to listen to Kate, because the emotional trauma that kicked up 5 years after he passed, she just was saying that it was just absolutely, gut-wrenching. And then she just went on to say that, she has reached out to Facebook. Facebook isn't helping her because when her husband passed away 7 years ago, that was before Facebook had this legacy contact feature. And the Facebook privacy policy says we're not giving anyone access to your account, no matter what, period, end of story. And so people don't think about this as well. It's not just that digital footprint that potentially results in more data centers being built, but it's this digital footprint that has the potential to be emotionally traumatic years later for our loved ones.
For sure. And I think that it is that level though about taking stock, like literally looking at all of the things that are connected to you. So even in terms of looking at bank accounts, your utility bill, even things like, my parents are aging, and it's that thing of, does it make sense for the utility bills now to be in both names? Because inevitably one will go first before the other. And so the drama about shutting that down, transferring it over, the whole lot. I mean, I know it can be done. It's a lot of administrative burden on people when they're in grief. And
Right.
also, even in terms of like that old email addresses, what stuff do you have in your email? Where have you got the information stored? Do you even use any of it anymore? And even from like within Ireland, which I presume would be the same then for most of Europe, is if you were to be audited, so for your business, you need to keep information for about 7 years. So that would be
Yes.
more financials. So you don't want to be deleting anything that's less than 7 years old. However, how often do you actually look at things that are more than, even 7 months? And how do you know what's relevant? Ideally, for your business, but even in terms of your life. I've had the fortune of sometimes being asked for something that I'm able to go back to my emails, but actually the significant amount of emails that I've kept that I've absolutely no use for. And the same way with mailing lists and subscriptions. Like, how often do you go in and unsubscribe? Obviously I'm going to do this as a shout out to sign up to Living Legacy's newsletter. So don't unsubscribe from that, but go on to living.ie. And I presume the digitalwrangler.com as well. But I think it is those things of how often do we go in and look at all of the mailing lists that we are actually subscribed to, and also the subscriptions that we pay into. Are we aware of all the things that are actually coming out of our bank account, and how do we know when to shut them down?
Yes. And so to me, this idea of what I call digital hygiene, and someone just asked me a couple of weeks ago, like, what does that mean? And in our like personal lives, right, Jennifer, I know you just got a beautiful haircut a few days ago, right? But we have our personal practices, right? Whether it's brushing our teeth, combing our hair before we maybe go to bed, doing laundry. We have these housekeeping things that we do around the house. Well, in our digital lives, it's just as important to do those same things. So I try to encourage people to once a month, even once a week, go back and look at their recent photos, right? And the challenge with digital photos is that, maybe today I'm going to sit down and I'm going to go through my photos and I'm going to delete. Oh yeah, that was something I was just trying to read last week. I can delete that, right? But I had a big family celebration last night for my birthday, and Thank you. I have a number of photos that would probably be considered duplicates.
Yeah.
But it was just yesterday. So right now, I'm not ready to even like reduce that number, right? But a month from now, I'm gonna
Mm.
go back and I'm like, you know what? Those, 50 photos from last night, I'm gonna reduce them down to 20. And then a year from now, or even 10 years from now, I
Mm.
might reduce them a little bit further. And so it really boils down to understanding that that digital photo that we take in that moment is important. 24 hours later, it
It
may
may.
still be it may still be important, or if it's a shopping list, it may have no relevance anymore. But over time, the relevance of that photo is going to likely diminish, or it could increase if it's, say, the last photo that you took with somebody who you love.
And this is one thing that actually because I used to love taking photographs and printing them out, and I would love to put together like little collages, different stuff. But inevitably, when a relationship ends, I would say most of them of that person go in the bin. So the thing is that I had somebody who I'd been involved with for many years, I'd known for many years. He parted away a long time ago, but he died unfortunately a couple of years ago. And I was going to the funeral, and I remember being so distressed because I actually thought that all of the photos I had of him and me together were gone. And thankfully, my mother was so good at keeping photo albums over the years, and she had photos. And then I realized actually I still had photos. So it was that sense of, oh, we still have some connection, even though we hadn't seen each other in years. But it was that level of I was able to then give his family photos of him. Now, obviously, like brothers and sisters, he never married, but it was that thing of I could now pass photos on to them of when he was a lot younger. And just different things that I remember being so grateful that actually I was a hoarder of photographs. But now I'm looking at the photos that were left behind, and a lot of them are nights out, but somebody has their eyes closed or pulling a funny face, and it's now time to really try and clear it out so that the photos I keep are the ones that really matter. But then
Yes.
it has really taught me a lesson about the importance of just having a few in case, because
Just
again, we talk about legacy. And I would like to think that all the people that were in my life, regardless of whether the relationship is still active or not, were an important part at that time. And it's a nice way to honor them as part of my legacy in my life. And like that, putting together, going back to the photo albums, going back to the scrapbooks, actually having things to really mark a life well lived.
Yes, absolutely. I couldn't have said it any better.
Yeah. So can I ask then, what's been your biggest learning in all of this?
Everyone has different priorities.
Mm, yeah.
For some people, it's really that emotional connection of whether it's the photos or a family Bible or the recipes that have been passed down a few generations. For
Yeah.
some people, that's the most important part. And they don't care as much, say, about all of the passwords and those things. Now, that's usually how they come to me. And then by the end, they are almost crying in gratitude of like, oh, I had no idea just how extensive
Mm,
all of these other aspects of my life are.
yeah.
And then and then on the other hand, I have clients who come to me who um similar to the woman who I shared with the husband who passed away in his Facebook account. I've got clients who come to me who either they themselves have experienced a similar story or someone like their BFF has gone through that and they're like, I do not want that for my family. So Kate, I tell me what all do we need to organize? And then by the end, they're feeling more confident and more at peace, that then they're willing to kind of have more of those more sentimental legacy kind of conversations. So I think that's what keeps things interesting is that all of just like we're all, human individuals and we all are unique. All of my clients come to me with a different perspective and a different motivator.
And can I ask then, so when you think about then legacy, what is your legacy to date?
Mm. So I asked my bonus kids and their significant others yesterday about this, and I was extremely humbled. Um, they gave, they shared with me that they find that I am very adaptable, which kind of really made it in the moment made me giggle because here I am in my mid to late 40s coming into their world and they're already teenagers, right? They are already who they are. And I had to learn to fit into their world. And the fact that they recognize that in and of itself was very touching. And then the fact that they actually verbalize that to me, um, just yeah. Now I know why you wanted me to have tissues with me. So so my adaptability, I really do try to do my best to lead by example. And maybe that's the engineer in me where I can be a little literal. And but I'm also, strong-minded and I'm committed to my cause, whatever that cause is, whether it's helping a client, helping my bonus kids, being an auntie, being a daughter to parents in their 80s. I take all of those commitments very seriously.
Yeah, nice.
Um, yeah.
And can I ask then, in terms of you getting your own digital legacy in order? Because I always think, like what we say here, I'm not sure if it'll translate, but the cobbler's shoes. So, the shoe mender, the shoemaker will always be the one, the last person to get the good shoes. So the same way a painter decorator, their house will be the last to actually get decorated. And I even recognize for me, in terms of talking to people about legacy, I'm fairly fulfilled with the life I've lived so far. But there's still that element, like I turn 50 next year, and I can't really picture my life beyond that. I'm going, God, what will my life beyond be? But I'm very much in that decluttering mode at the moment. So it's a nice reflection. But in terms of, what do you still have to do with your own digital legacy to get all of that in order?
Well, in the spirit of being authentic,
Yeah.
my personal digital legacy is buttoned up.
Okay.
My business is still needs just a smidgen more work. Because, and I am convinced that no matter what a small business owner's business is, whether they own a pub, have a pizzeria, they're a dentist,
Yeah.
or they're a residential organizer who, organizes people's pantries. I believe that every business is a digital business.
Okay.
And all of those online accounts that support the business and making sure that that business owner not only has the accounts, but even like how-to information on how to update a website, how to file the taxes, who is the CPA for the business. So that's probably one area in the spirit of transparency where I am I'm not where I want to be.
Yeah. 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 And how will you get there though? How can people learn from your example? Is it that you still you can do that other people can learn from?
So I am working on a process similar to like, reviewing my photos for 2 minutes once a week. Is I'm trying to tackle basically set aside 30 to 45 minutes a week to just make more progress on organizing the digital aspects of my business.
That's a really good, that's a really good tip, because I know for myself, it is that thing. I love having my emails organized, and it's easy to do when you're using something like Outlook. It's not so easy to do when you're using Gmail. And it is that aspect of actually going through the emails and they're filed. So I know what I have to deal with for, the week to come. But even doing that within kind of work as well and personal life, as you say, spending an hour a week, spending 30 minutes a week to go through, pick one thing and get that right. Even looking at things like your online digital legacy. If you had died yesterday, what are the things that people would have had to do that you haven't yet organized? So I think
Yeah,
it's
and then and I even mentioned it to my husband driving home from dinner last night. So last Christmas, like I usually use that week between Christmas and New Year's to, reflect back, but really kind of think about, okay, what is the story I want to be telling a year from now? And last Christmas, I was going through my phone and I was like, you know what? I want to kind of clean out my contacts. I had 1,300 people saved in my address book or my contacts on my phone. 1,300.
yeah,
And it's, a lot of them are, our first name, last name,
yeah,
maybe a first name. And I put myself in my husband's shoes. And I'm like, how is he going to know out of all of these people who are still important to me, right? And so I started like going through them and I'm like, oh, here's the name of my mechanic from 12 years ago. I don't need this guy anymore, right? And so it even was a purposeful action for me to reduce and clean out those digital contacts. And then it prompted me to like, you know what? I guess I should have a list or a decoder ring, whatever you want to call it. Who's my husband going to know who to call if something were to happen to me? Because since we met later in life, he doesn't know all the people that became friendly with or have relationships with in my 20s and my 30s or my childhood.
yeah,
And so you start to kind of pick apart all of these digital pieces and parts. We can spend hours on photos, on email, on our digital files, on our contacts. And so I just tend to suggest to folks, do what works for you. If it's 5 minutes a day, or you just listen to your favorite song, usually a song's 3.5 minutes, then during that song, just take some sort of action.
yeah.
If it's easier for you to do an hour a week, then do an hour a week. But just something, because when you mentioned it earlier, that grief,
Mm,
it's gonna impact people differently, and it's very unpredictable.
yeah, yeah, for sure. And you're not even going to be in the right frame of all to be
No.
looking at your own thing, let alone looking after someone else's.
Yeah, absolutely. And I kind of tease my husband with the, okay, honey, you're gonna have to, pull the plug. You're gonna have to plan my cocktail party because I'm not having a dreadful funeral. Like we're having a party. And
Yeah.
then, he's gonna have to take over all of household operations and all of those auto ship things that we now get delivered to our home. And I'm
Well,
like, and on top of this, you yourself have aging parents, you have kids who are starting to figure out what adulting means, and you have a full-time job.
yeah. Can I just ask, sorry, just to go back, what are auto ships?
Oh, auto ship. So here in the States, like we'll use Amazon. It's really kind of a popular thing.
Yeah.
Um, so my brother, I'm sorry, my husband has this addiction to coffee.
Okay.
So we go into Amazon and we set it up such that every 4 weeks his coffee is delivered to the house.
Oh,
So it's great, Jennifer, because that mental load is, we're free of it, right? But then you think about, okay, we've got coffee, we have pantry items. I just got a notification that like shampoo is coming next week. But they're like, I handle all of that stuff.
yeah.
So I get hit by that ice cream truck tomorrow.
Who
You know,
knows?
my husband's not going to know about these things
Yeah.
unless one, they start showing up on the doorstep, and then he's going to be like, oh crap.
Yeah.
You know, or even some of my own medications. I don't know if that happens in Ireland, where we can get medications shipped to us every 3 months.
No, not that I'm aware of. I think you have to go to your local pharmacy to pick them up. But I think the thing as well is that it's, I trained in the end of life planning facilitation with an organization called Before I Go Solutions in the UK. And one
Mhm.
of the things the founder had spoken about was that we each in a household know how to do different elements of the functioning of the household. So it could be one person looks after the technology and the television setup, and who uses the washing machine and the dryer and all that. But then somebody else may take care of different elements and different responsibilities. Is it documented anywhere? Have you ever kind of put down what the systems are, what the process is? So if any of you even get sick, let alone die, does somebody know what needs to be done? And even the
Yes.
same thing of, my father had a stroke 10 years ago, and since then, like, really loved to, I introduced him to Spotify a few years ago, and was fascinated that every single song that he was thinking of from his childhood, everything was on Spotify. So he was fascinated by it, and he would spend hours listening to Spotify, to podcasts, to audiobooks. And then last year he got diagnosed with vascular dementia, but prior to that, he had started to kind of lose interest in Spotify. So now even if you put music on, he has no particular interest. But yet there was a subscription for Spotify where we now cancel it because we just said, well, there's no point. But even things like that, I went through all of the subscriptions that both my parents have. I've gone through mine. And, you also talk about the contacts, who a lot of the people that my dad knew have now gone. Like, he's nearly mid 80s. So a lot of his older friends have now gone. But again, when his time comes, who do we contact? I did a very geeky thing a couple of years ago. I did an Excel sheet I set out every single person I could think of, but I put it into columns. Like, I'm such a nerd. I put it into columns of, okay, so who do my family need to contact directly? And who
Yes.
do those people need to contact to pass on the message? So rather than my family having 100 people to ring, they have maybe about 20. And then from those 20, they can let everybody else know. So
You
I
put
did that.
together an emergency call tree. I love it.
But you know what I did do is I put a password on it. And do you think any of us can remember what the password is? No. So I now need to.
Oh no.
So that was my venture into being very organized, and then just completely out when I realized I can't remember what the password was. So it's that thing of starting again. And again, some people have left my life, new people have joined. But I do think it is that thing of just keeping track, because the way I would approach it with clients is, think about it in the sense of, well, and you yourself, like, you recently got married, but consider the amount of time that you spent planning that wedding. And even if it was just a very small event, you still spent a lot of time of, who are the people that you want there? What do you want said about you? What food do you want? What drink do you want? You stat all of that information effectively for your funeral. What food, what drink, what people, how do you want
Yes.
to look? How do you want to be dressed? What
Right.
music do you want played? And if you actually
That's
do all of that and consider, instead of focusing on the sadness of an ending of a life, and yes, we want it to be a celebration, plan for it as if it is going to be a big party. I'm planning on having a party next year for my 50th, and I kind of feel, well, everything I would want to celebrate me. And yes, it might be quite narcissistic, but why not? But it's that thing of, well, actually, these will be all that, and the people that I want there as well. So I think if we focus on the good celebrations, all of that information then will inform the commemorations.
Oh, absolutely. Because I had asked my husband, when this kind of light bulb went off in my mind, I said, okay, well, who are you gonna contact? And
Yeah.
he's like, I don't know, maybe I'll just post it on Facebook. And I'm like, over my dead body.
Well,
I
it would
do
be.
my yeah, right? I'm like, my friends are not going to find out that something happened to me from Facebook. Like, no. No.
I know. And I think that's the thing is, like, there's an organization in the United Kingdom called Biscuit Tin. And it's an amazing concept because it is all of that aspect of putting all of your digital legacy in one place. So all of your passwords, your legal documents, your financial documents, but giving the relevant people access to it. So your lawyer, your financial planner, your accountant have access to the certain relevant elements to it, but also keeping things like your contact list, who would need to be notified. Now, obviously, it wouldn't just do a blanket email, she's dead. But it is that thing of how to have it in one place. So at least one or two people have the specific access to it, but they can only get access when it's been triggered by the likes of their GP or their lawyer to say, yes, this has now happened. And I think that's a wonderful concept. But my fear would always be if there's, you know, a hacker or a scam or something goes down with the server, or even the thing is that as well in the UK, you have about 3 to 4 weeks from when the person dies to when their funeral happens. In Ireland, it's 3 to 4 days.
Yeah, it was same in the States. It's very
And like,
quick.
yeah, you cannot think of anything straight in 3 to 4 days.
Nope.
So I have to explain that to them to say, look, what you have is phenomenal, but it needs to change culturally in each country or each community that you're dealing with, because that biscuit tin gets triggered when they get notified that they died. And I said, you need, I think, to prove it. In Ireland, it can take 6 months to get the death cert, but the person's long buried or cremated by then. So it is that thing of we each have, I suppose, in this digital world, there's a lot of things that we can all do, but then there's certain differences based on cultural needs and
Yes.
beliefs.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely.
So you mentioned obviously that it is, you know, you've now entered the fabulous 50s. And one of the things that I did actually task you with was about considering, now that you're starting a new year,
Mhm.
all of the fives, and appropriate for you for the fact that you're 50, is that thing of what are the new things you'd like to try in the coming year? What are the
Mhm.
5 achievements you'd like? And obviously you can factor in the Digital Wrangler and your business success, and then
Right.
5 places you'd like to visit. So what were your thoughts on that when I sent that to you?
Well, I love that. I think and I love it because one of the things that I want to keep doing is remain curious.
Yeah.
I love reading, I love learning. And so I do want to make sure that I continue to be curious. I also am making a commitment to myself to get physically stronger. So just about a month ago, I joined a new gym. I am starting to lift like barbell weights and all this stuff. Um, and this might sound a little contrary, this next one, since I am recently married, but my husband and I are now starting to dabble with becoming empty nesters. And I say dabble because his youngest is home this summer from college, and he'll go back to college next month. And I just want to enjoy this new season with my husband of being empty nesters where we can be a little selfish about ourselves. And so I'm really looking forward to that. And I mean, I think I'm a pretty good wife, but I'm looking forward to becoming a better wife and
Oh,
really just focusing more on him, while we are continue to coach these young adults to like lean more into their adult lives. And then lastly, I just want to keep being me. You know,
yeah.
like spending so many years in the corporate world, especially since I was pretty much, you know, a minority being female working in tech. What I love about my business is that I can show up and be me every day.
Nice.
And I want to keep doing that so that 10 years from now, I can look back on this decade and say, yeah, I've done that. So like, you know, the 20s and 30s, I kind of figured myself out. Now I want the 50s to be truly being my authentic self, and I may not be for everybody, and that's okay.
But you can't be for everybody because
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So, twice a month I go into local independent living communities and I give these like pro bono tech talks. And so the last one that I was at was a week ago Friday. So it was just a couple of days after my birthday. And they, these I don't know, I don't even know their ages. Let's just say their 80s, maybe some of them are in their early 90s. They always just love when I show up, and they love that I share something about myself. So I shared with them, oh, hey, I'm now a decade older. What advice do all of you have for me? You're 30, 40 years older. What advice do you have for me? And they just said, you made it to 50, girl. Just keep living it up.
Ah,
And
that's
yeah,
fabulous.
I wanted to share that with you. I thought you would really appreciate that. And I mean, a couple of them even got up and they're starting to do the dance. They're like, she's 50. And then, they're telling me privately that like life just keeps getting better. And so collectively, their advice was just live it up. Be you, do you, and live.
Oh, absolutely. So can I ask now, in terms of what would be your top tips for people who are watching this to get started in terms of looking at their digital legacy? What will be the key things? Now, we've spoken obviously about taking a piece of time each day or each week to just try and, declutter and stay on top of everything. But
Yes.
what would be the top things that you feel that they need to focus on just to get started?
Well, first, our devices go everywhere with us these days. So making sure that loved ones can access devices. And that's going to even look different for different people. Some people may feel comfortable giving their passwords to all of their devices to their loved ones right now. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Other people may be like, you know what? I'm very protective of my devices. So then I would just encourage them to leave that information, leave those details, leave the password to your laptop, your iPad, your phone. Don't forget even, your wearables these days. So access to devices, certainly very important. If and while the digital decluttering is important, I would almost argue that the digital organizing of all of your online accounts might be more important to people. Making sure that loved ones know what online accounts you have so that they can properly close them, especially now that we're entering this new era of artificial intelligence. We just don't know where that data or how that data could potentially be used in the future. And then I think the third tip is going to be very individual. What is important to you? Are your photos most important? Are your contacts most important? And whatever is most important, then try and carve out a little time to organize them. Because my husband, like you were saying with like the slideshow, my husband has shoe boxes and shoe boxes and shoe boxes of slides from the 60s and 70s. They're not really labeled. And he's just starting a process now of going through and organizing them. So this is 50 years later. Let's make things a little bit easier. Let's lighten that grief and create space for our loved ones so that if they do want to crawl under a blanket fort, that they can in peace as they process their grief. To
And I
me, I think I was just going
just
to say, to me, I think that's the greatest legacy we can leave behind, is leaving all of this information organized and discoverable by our loved ones.
for sure. I think just to add on to that is probably what is also really appreciated by your loved ones after you're gone, or even in kind of final days, weeks, or years, is actually knowing what mattered to you. So, like that with the photographs, actually, the photographs tell a story. So, what are the stories of your life? How can you actually capture them? And like that, print them off, put them in a scrapbook, put them in, photo boxes, write on them, label them. But even in terms of really showing the benefit of all of that kind of digital presence as well is, we all look at when we're getting policies, insurance policies, different things, we go, are we getting the best deal? But the same way, use this as an opportunity when you're looking through maybe on an annual policy. Actually, do you have somebody set up as your next of kin or somebody that is authorized to access your account if you're not able to access it yourself? Because even if you're in an accident or you're cognitively impaired, quite often things like banks will freeze your accounts. So you won't be able to access it, nor will anybody else, unless you've got a power of attorney in place. And so looking at things like Facebook, do you have an authorized person assigned? Do you have something about turning your Gmail accounts into, like I just set up a thing about 6 months ago, because I had so many different accounts for different things that actually, if I hadn't used the account in 3 months, another account gets notified. If it hasn't been touched in a year, the account itself gets shut down and all of the information deleted. So there's enough notification, but it allows you to know, okay, that email is now gone. And I unfortunately deleted an email years ago, and I do regret that I never transferred the information over. But I think at that time I was like, oh, I don't need it, it's done. But actually allowing yourself that time to go, can you appoint somebody as a backup person? And then the same way with your bank accounts, your utility bills, then at least if something happens that you're short term not able to look after them, they can look after these things for you. And then if you recover, then your authorization is, I suppose, reinstated. But then when you do die, that person is already in place.
Yes, absolutely. I met a business owner, oh, maybe 6 weeks ago up in the mountains, and she is in the process of starting a second business. And I was actually talking about business succession, and she, similar to the Facebook story where she kind of turns to this group of women business owners and says, you better be listening to Kate. And then she shared that she had been in an accident 5 years ago, and she had a brain injury. She couldn't speak. She couldn't remember the password to her phone. She remembered nothing. So now she's fully functional, but her family had to shut that business down because she remembered nothing about it. And so now she's in the process of starting a new business, and she's just like, I have learned so much,
Yeah.
just about having those delegations in place and having all of the information, organized. But a very, very powerful story that she shared.
Absolutely. And I am mindful that you have all of these tips and you are, doing some great work with communities and individuals, but I know that people themselves can sign up online for some of your programs. So can you just tell us a little bit about that?
Oh, absolutely. So I have a digital course. It comes in 4 different versions because we all have different styles, and we use different technology. But that digital course will walk you through 12 areas of your life to guide you to organize all of that information. So it's pre-recorded. You watch it on your own schedule at your own pace, and that's a really great and affordable option for a lot of people. I also have a 12-week group program where we meet over Zoom. I limit the attendees to just 5 people, but we go through those same 12 areas. But what's great about the live program is that people can ask questions. And so it really becomes a little tailored and personalized. And if you happen to miss a session, because life happens, all of those sessions are recorded and made available to the 5 participants only. And then I do work with people one-on-one, but for the most part, my 12-week program and my digital course is the majority of my business.
And how can people
Sign
sign
up and find out more about you.
Well, they can go to my website, thedigitalwrangler.com, and that's Wrangler with a W. And you can learn about my services. I have a bi-weekly, every other week newsletter, and that they can sign up for. They can download a free ebook to get started with a couple of tips to encourage them to start making things a little bit easier for their loved ones as well.
That's great. Oh my
That's
goodness.
great. Oh my
Well,
goodness.
I have to say, Kate, thank you so much for your time. I mean, I've learned so much, and I'm kind of eager now to just kind of, from logging off here, go straight on to go, right, what do I now need to do? But I do hope that we will get to talk again in the future and kind of find out any new tips, any new updates that you have. But for now, I just wanted to say thank you so much for your time and for sharing your knowledge with us, because I know many, many people will really benefit from it. And on behalf of, I suppose, Living Legacy itself. Thank you for being part of our Living Legacy conversations. And also happy birthday as well, because I think a new year and a new decade is always a wonderful thing to celebrate. And I know we're getting a couple of messages in from people to say thanks so much. So I think thank you very much to everybody as well that has attended today's session. We are here Sundays from 7 p.m. British Standard Time. So come join us. So for the next number of weeks, we've got some great insights from people who are going to make your life easier. And I know definitely from what we've learned from Kate today will just be incredibly helpful. So Kate, thank you so much, and follow her at the Digital Wrangler as well on Instagram and Facebook. Thanks so much.
Thank you.